All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. It's hour number 3, and we kick it off with Bret Stephens, Pulitzer Prize-winning writer for the Wall Street Journal and author of a great new book. I think the last time we talked to him was here in the studio about the book, and it is America in Retreat, the New Isolationism and Coming Global Disorder. There it is on your screen. And Bret, welcome back, sir.
It's good to be back with you, Steve.
Well, good to talk to you. I know you've been traveling a lot, and let's get right to this here. Do the Democrats have an Israel problem? I mean, does it matter to them how they're perceived? Does it matter to them what they did, what Nancy Pelosi did, what the Congressional Black Caucus did? I mean, do they care at all?
Well, it's coming out in the open more and more, and I think the 50 Democratic no-shows at Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech kind of brought to light a reality that has been taking place for a very long time. The gradual distancing of the Democratic Party, particularly its more leftist wing, from Israel. Last summer, during the war in Gaza, liberal Democrats were pretty much evenly divided on who was more to blame for that war, with some 30% being more prepared to blame Israel than blame Hamas for the war. If you remember the Democratic National Convention back in 2012, it was they basically had to force through a vote, a pro-Israel vote on as part of the platform, because there were boos and there was so much
right.
dissent.
Yes. Yes.
And now you're seeing it come out again in what I thought was the absolutely shameful reaction to a powerful speech by the Prime Minister. Agree with it or not, it's part of being a Democrat in a small d sense of the word, that you ought to be willing to hear out arguments from friends who you might not agree with. And I think part of the problem the Democrats have is that they're led by a president who's never had much sympathy for Israel, and who now, in the last years of his term, doesn't feel a political need to even pretend to have much sympathy.
Right. Well, there's nobody I'd rather ask this of than you, because you've traveled, you've covered, you know so much. And where do you think? Tell me if you agree or disagree. I think a deal is going to be signed. I think Iran would have to really work hard not to have Obama sign a deal, and the rest of the countries for that matter. And then Israel is in a position. So do you agree that a deal will be signed? He's effectively, I think, trying to circumvent the Congress. Let's assume he does. What does Israel do?
Well, look, it's very hard to know whether a deal will be signed for this reason. It isn't that this president doesn't desperately want a deal. I think he wants this deal as much as anything he's ever wanted as president, with a possible exception of Obamacare itself. Question is whether the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, accepts a deal. And you know, look, we have a record. We have a record of the Ayatollah consistently rejecting the deals negotiated by his people at the last minute. It happened in 2009. It happened in 2010. It might happen again. Now, what does Israel do in the event of a deal? Israel's going to be in a box, because it will be confronting not only the reality of an Iran that is being given the keys to an industrial-scale nuclear capability, but also the reality of the United States, which is handing Iran those keys.
Absolutely, and you know, there were reports that last year Israel was planning on hitting Iran, and the president said he would shoot down the planes. I don't know if that's true or not.
I'm not sure that's true.
But would it? Okay, would Israel have to take military action? They're in a box, but are the flaps open for them to do that?
Well, here, look. I mean, the Israelis. I'll tell you two things. Israelis consistently insist, not only in public but in private conversations, that they have the capability to do substantial damage, degrading Iran's nuclear capabilities. A. B. American military officials who have looked at this consistently insist that Israel can't really do what needs to be done to meaningfully set back the Iranian nuclear program. So either one of them is wrong and one of them is bluffing, or the alternative is that Israel has options that the American military hasn't fully considered.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, Bret, look forward to talking to you again, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks a million.
My pleasure. Bret Stephens, ladies and gentlemen. Very interesting, very dire, but very interesting. And we're talking about, real life and real death and real existential threats, whether or not this president wants to admit it or not. All right, we're going to turn our attention to Hillary and her emails with Democratic strategist Christopher Hahn, who will join me in studio. It's all next on the Friday edition of the Steve Malzberg Show. Don't go away.